You know what's fascinating about spiritual transformation? Most people think it requires some dramatic moment like a near-death experience. But what if the real magic happens in those tiny, seemingly foolish choices we make every single day?
That reminds me of St. Dismas' story. Talk about a dramatic moment of transformation right at the end.
Right, but here's what's really interesting about Dismas. His story actually teaches us more about everyday choices than last-minute conversions. You know, those small moments where we choose kindness over judgment.
Like that parable about the midnight friend, where someone's willing to look foolish just to help another person.
Exactly. And what's really striking is how this connects to modern life. Think about it. We're constantly faced with these small choices. Do we respond to that angry email with equal anger? Do we help someone who might never acknowledge it?
Well, that's interesting because it's almost like building a spiritual practice out of inconvenience.
You know what's fascinating? The text actually talks about becoming a living temple, not waiting for some physical building, but transforming ourselves through these daily acts of seemingly foolish generosity. It's like each small choice is a brick in this spiritual structure.
That's such a powerful image. But how do you maintain that perspective when dealing with difficult people?
Well, that's where the parable of the rich man and his barns comes in. It's this complete reorientation of values. Instead of focusing on storing up wealth or protecting ourselves, we're invited to become channels of compassion. Even when, no, especially when it seems foolish by worldly standards.
So it's like choosing to be what some might call a fool for love?
Exactly. And here's what's really profound. The text talks about lending without expecting return, about being kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. That's such a radical departure from how most of us naturally think about relationships.
Though I imagine that's easier said than done in practice.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where the story of the Samaritan village becomes so relevant. Remember how the disciples wanted to call down fire from heaven? But instead, Jesus simply moves on to the next village. It's this powerful example of breaking the cycle of retaliation.
That's quite different from our usual impulse to seek revenge or at least justice.
And you know what's really interesting about this? In Jewish tradition, there's this concept of mitzvahs finding holiness in everyday actions. It's not about grand gestures, but about these small, consistent choices we make.
Like those tiny moments where we choose not to engage in gossip or judgment.
Precisely. And here's what I find most encouraging. We don't need special circumstances or dramatic moments. Every ordinary day gives us countless opportunities to practice this kind of transformative love. It's about having the courage to look foolish for the sake of something greater.
That really brings everything full circle, from the dramatic moment of Dismas to these small, daily opportunities.
And perhaps that's the deepest wisdom here, recognizing that what looks most foolish to the world might actually be the wisest choice we can make. It's about becoming vessels for mercy rather than judgment, even when judgment might feel more satisfying.
Well, that certainly gives us a lot to think about in our daily interactions.
You know what? Maybe that's exactly what spiritual wisdom looks like in practice. Not some lofty philosophical concept, but these small, seemingly foolish choices to love, even when it costs us something. That's where real transformation happens.